usually gender violence happens, and when it happens, it is always to prove a point. What is the point? We'll come to it in a brief time. But before we understand gender violence, we have to understand what is gender. Is it always that women are getting violated against, or are there some cases of men getting violated? Yes, there are cases in which women are aggressive and violent towards men. But since today's topic is about women, we will only focus about the violence perpetrated onto the women. So before we start this topic, we have to get into a particular mindset, what we call a very scientific mindset. However scientific we claim ourselves to be, without our knowledge, we have something called ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is a kind of outlook where we believe that where we come from, the ethos that we come from, the ethnicity that we have, our language, our religion, our culture, our background, our hometown, all of these things, we take it as a center of the universe and we view the world through that point. As long as we are ethnocentric, we will not be able to see the problem in its full strength. So first, before we start this conversation, we have to shed our ethnocentrism and look at the world as if we are really artificial intelligence, as if we are just newly arrived aliens. Suppose we are aliens and we look at this world, what would we see? How would we process that information? That is the attitude that we have to adopt in order to understand gender-based issues. So in an alien's eyes, through the alien's mind, who will be the female and who will be the male? Whom do we call female? So to the alien, whether both were members of the species, provided both of them wear the same clothes. The man also wears jeans, the woman also wears jeans. Man wears t-shirt, woman wears t-shirt. So it is not the dress, it is not the background, it is not the job that they do. The only difference that makes the woman a woman and a man is that the woman is a progenitor. She has the uterus and the ovaries, and probably she'll be giving milk to the babies. And in a world when artificial intelligence will rule this, maybe planet Earth or some other planet, or where aliens have landed in Earth, we would be sufficiently advanced that we don't need a woman to give birth to children. As we speak now, we have artificial uteruses in which endangered species are grown. Endangered species now, they are actually cultivated and grown inside artificial uteruses because the mothers are not available, so we don't have a natural uterus. So we have created an artificial uterus through which the baby can be generated. So 100 years from now, maybe we will have this in great numbers, and it will be common practice for people to have children through artificial wombs. Let's assume that there are artificial wombs 100 years from now. Then what is the point in having women and what is the point in having men? Why would we still have the need for women in this world? Or would we still need women in this world? 100 years from now, when we are able to generate children through the artificial womb, we would also be well developed in stem cell culture. Stem cell is the first cell of the human body. If we can harvest some stem cells, we can create every other cell from it. We can create lung cell, we can create kidney cell, we can create the sperm, we can create the egg, we can create a new baby, we can create children in the lab. Even if we create children in the lab, just like maybe bacteria, we put series of test tubes, each batch, one batch, we take the stem cell, we create the progeny, then we give birth to that progeny and take the stem cell and create another generation. We can do several generations in a span of maybe 10 to 15 days. But if we do create human beings like that in the stem cell, in a test tube, in the lab, would we call this life? It generates faster than us. We take maybe 50 years to create one generation. It will only need 15 days to create maybe 10 generations. In 15 days, it creates 10 generations, but this fast, rapid rate of reproduction, would we even call it life? In all possibilities, we will not call it life because it is just a series of cell production and there is no life in it. So what we call life is actually our experience in life, what we undergo, the pains, the trials, the tribulations, the happiness, the sadness, all the different experiences that we undergo. Those are what actually start having us. This is what we call as life. So in this situation, let us just assume that we want to take this test tube specimen and start making it a human with full human experiences.
Sorry,
so which member of the
sorry,
community?
sorry to interrupt. Let me just briefly summarize what you have talked about till now before we go ahead.
Sure.
Uh, साथियों, डॉक्टर डॉक्टर शालिनी जी ने जो अभी तक बात रखी है उसमें उन्होंने ये टॉपिक को शुरू किया है लैंगिक हिंसा के बारे में, जो हमारी आज की जो चर्चा है, जो हम कह रहे हैं कि जो उसका एक जो सामाजिक और मनोवैज्ञानिक दृष्टिकोण जो हमें देखना है उसके बारे में एक सवाल से शुरू किया है। सवाल ये है कि लैंगिक हिंसा को समझने से पहले क्या हमें लिंग को समझना चाहिए, जेंडर को समझना चाहिए। और उसी में ही हमारा वैज्ञानिक दृष्टिकोण की बात करते हुए उन्होंने कहा कि हमारा जो अप्रोच है अभी तक सोचने का, वो एथेनोसेंट्रिक जो अप्रोच है, उसके इतर जाकर यदि हम वैज्ञानिक दृष्टिकोण की बात करें तो काफी उन्होंने साइंटिफिक जो डिस्कवरीज हुई हैं, एक जो महिला के रोल को लेकर, महिला के जिन्हें हम समझते हैं कि वो महिलाएं ही कर सकती हैं, जैसे बच्चों को पैदा करना। तो उसी का उन्होंने एक उदाहरण लिया कि आर्टिफिशियल यूट्रस के, और जो जिन्हें हम कृत्रिम गर्भाशय भी कह सकते हैं हिंदी में, कि हम मानवता वहां तक आ चुकी है। और उसके आगे ले जाते हुए उन्होंने बात करी कि कैसे जो वैज्ञानिक हैं वो स्टेम सेल से और भी सेल्स बना रहे हैं और आगे उसको रिप्रोड्यूस करके ह्यूमन बॉडी की शेप में भी की तरफ भी हम जा रहे हैं। लेकिन एक क्वेश्चन के साथ इन्होंने इस बात को रखा है कि क्या इस प्रकार का जो रिप्रोडक्शन होगा उसे लाइफ कहा जाएगा? क्या उसमें वो मानवीय मूल्य हैं, खुशियाँ, दुख, ऑल दी एक्सपीरियंसेस जो हमारे अनुभव हैं, उसकी चर्चा करते हुए वो अब आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। डॉक्टर, यू कैन कंटिन्यू। डॉक्टर शालिनी, यू कैन कंटिन्यू अहेड।
I'm back, ma'am.
Yes, you can go ahead. Kavinder has translated. You can go ahead.
Okay. So suppose we get to that level, and suppose it's an artificial intelligence software that is monitoring the progress. Now we have uterus, and maybe it will still produce milk. So we have milk. What else do we need to create healthy human beings? Is food and just having a uterus enough to create healthy human beings? This is a question that this new generation will face. And it turns out that we just don't need one uterus and some milk in order to create children. We need a very nurturing parenthood for the children to feel nurtured, loved, cared, spoken to, sung to, caressed to, everything the children need, because what we human needs as a first need is called attachment. So attachment is a fundamental human need. Previously, we used to say the basic needs for human being is the food, clothing, shelter. Now we know it is not the case. We need attachment first. There was an experiment conducted in the early 1960s by a psychiatrist called Dr. Harry Harlow. He experimented with monkeys and he found that monkeys actually preferred a certain kind of mother. So in his experiment, he had two different mother images. One was made of a wire and the other was made of cloth. The wire mother had a milk bottle. The cloth mother did not have any milk bottle. But the cloth mother had a face, two eyes and one nose and a mouth. So they brought a newly trained little monkey. It had already been separated from the parents, and it was just given bottle feed, and it was brought inside this room. And the researcher had to find out which mother the child prefers. And to their great surprise, the little baby did not go to the milk bottle. It went immediately to the cuddly mother and hugged her, looked at her face, kept hugging her for a long time. And only when it could not tolerate the hunger, just while holding the cuddly mother, holding on to the terry cloth mother, it just leaned forward and had milk from the wire mesh mother. So from that point onwards, we changed everything in psychiatry. We realized that it is not food that is a primary motivator for us. It is comfort, it is love, it is attachment, and having a primary caregiver whom we can trust. I'll stop now. Maybe you can translate.
या श्योर। सो जो वैज्ञानिक उपलब्धियों की बात डॉक्टर शालिनी जी कर रही थी, उसी कड़ी को आगे ले जाते हुए डॉक्टर शालिनी जी ने बताया कि यदि वैज्ञानिक एक ऐसे बेबी का हम ऐसे इस स्तर पर आ जाते हैं कि हम रिप्रोडक्शन के जरिए आर्टिफिशियल बच्चों का निर्माण अगर कर लें तो वो क्या लाइफ होगी। और उसी को आगे ले जाते हुए उन्होंने एक बात रखी कि एक जो मूल जरूरत है, रिक्वायरमेंट है हमारे मानव जीवन की, वो जुड़ाव है, अटैचमेंट। और इसका इसी का उन्होंने एक उदाहरण दिया, जो एक स्टडी हुई बंदरों के ऊपर, और उसमें भी स्टडी में भी यही पाया गया कि बेसिक फूड रिक्वायरमेंट से भी ज्यादा, खाने से भी ज्यादा जरूरत अटैचमेंट की पाई गई।
So, who gives better attachment to children? Is it the father or is it the mother? Yes, of course, very rarely fathers give great sense of attachment to the children. But in the natural order of things, it is the woman, the mother, who is giving a great sense of attachment to the children. The outcomes when there is only a single parent, and if that single parent happens to be a woman, children have good enough outcomes. They fare very well in life in terms of education, health, self-care, etc. But when it's a dad, then the results are not so glorious. Maybe there are once in a while we'll meet wonderful dads, but that's not quite common. So from the aliens' point of view, suppose aliens come to the earth, you let us just imagine, let us ask ourselves this question: which of the two human beings will the aliens want more? Will they want the women more or the men more? Can somebody from the audience answer? Or you can post this question to them, sir.
तो मैं इसको हिंदी में रखता हूँ बात को, कि उसी बात को, जुड़ाव को ही, अटैचमेंट को ही आगे ले जाते हुए डॉक्टर साहब ने कहा कि फिर ये एक सवाल, एक प्रश्न हमारे सामने आता है कि जो जुड़ाव है वो कौन दे पाता है? क्या वो माता देंगी या वो पिता देंगे? नैसर्गिक जुड़ाव जो आएगा वो कहाँ से आएगा? अ, और अगर एलियन के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हम देखें, अगर एलियन हमारी धरती पर आए तो वो क्या चाहेंगे? तो ये एक जुड़ाव के लिए किसके पास जाएंगे, ये एक सवाल रखा है मैडम ने। तो आप में से कोई, किसी को भी लगता है तो प्लीज अपना आंसर दीजिए। क्या ये सही था डॉक्टर शालिनी? वाज इट राइट?
What did he say? What did he hear?
So
Yes, yes.
from aliens perspective, whom alien should choose? They would
Yes,
choose.
yes, rather. Whom would the alien prefer?
Prefer.
Whom
Yeah.
will they want to transport back to their planet?
वो अपने साथ किसको ले जाना चाहेंगे अपने वापस प्लानिट पे?
Or we can
Probably
frame this
the
question.
yeah, probably the mother because of the nurturing or the care.
Yes,
Probably because
you're right, madam. So whatever happens, if we go to Mars and colonize Mars, or if Martians come to Earth and colonize us, the more prized gender would be the female. Why the woman would be more prized? Because this is common in Tamil Nadu. I give this example. People from your region should not get offended. I'm used to speaking like this, so if it's a little bit offensive, you have to please bear with me. But this is a very strong example that we could say. Let us assume there are two islands, both have 100 women and 100 men. Let's assume there is a disease in island one. All the 100 women have died except one. So there is only one woman in island one, and 100 men are continuing to exist. And in island two, there are 100 women and only one man. So one island has one woman, 100 men. The other island has the opposite, 100 women and one man. Which island do you think will prosper faster? The island where there are 100 men, or the island where there are 100 women? So it so happens that one man can, if we plan it properly, impregnate all the 100 women, and in 2-3 generations, that island will be very highly populated.
yes,
But how much ever they try, one woman and 100 men, the population will never flourish. That is why, whether it's a Titanic or it's an aircraft, they always say if there is an emergency, we have to first evacuate the women and children. Women and children, that's the first thing they want to evacuate. Because women in nature are indispensable. And you must not take it as an offense, but in nature, men are dispensable. But this big,
सॉरी एक उदाहरण के
no, no,
साथ
please.
में, हाँ, एक उदाहरण के साथ में मैम ने बात बताई, और इसके लिए माफी चाहते हैं कि अगर ये किसी की भावनाओं को हर्ट करता है तो, लेकिन ये सिर्फ एक उदाहरण है, इसको उदाहरण के तौर पे लिया जाए कि दो आइलैंड हमारे पास हैं, दो द्वीप ऐसे हमारे पास में है जहाँ पर एक द्वीप पर 100 महिलाएं और एक पुरुष है, और दूसरे आइलैंड पे या दूसरे द्वीप पे हमारे पास एक महिलाएं हैं और 100 पुरुष हैं। अ, तो एक 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 जगह 100 महिलाएं एक पुरुष हैं, दूसरी जगह पर एक महिला और 100 पुरुष है। तो किस आइलैंड पर, किस द्वीप पर जो लाइफ है वो फ्लरिश करेगी, जीवन आगे अच्छी गति से बढ़ेगा आगे। तो इसके बारे में रेस्पॉन्स में यही कहा गया है कि जहाँ महिलाएं ज़्यादा हैं वहाँ जल्दी जीवन आगे बढ़ेगा। अ,
So in nature, it is very clear that the female is the more preferred version. And let us go back and understand why in nature the woman is so protected and so preferred. And then we have to explain how is that we randomly say women are more protected by nature. Because it is true that throughout the entire lifespan of a woman, from the time that she is a fetus to the time that she is born, to the time that she attains menarche, to the time that she attains menopause, women always have a better head start because they don't fall ill, they recover very fast. Since they have two X chromosomes, their immunity is very high. They don't do things that risk their life. And since they have estrogen, that hormone protects their heart. So they usually don't have heart attack or stroke. So women are always protected by nature because women, if we think from nature's point of view, so obviously women are more vital for survival. So women are protected by nature. Given this background, let us now come back to India and understand how women have throughout history been treated. In the beginning of ancient history, we do not have a clear history about it from an Indian point of view. But from artifacts all over the world, we know that around 35 to 50,000 years ago, wherever they found the figurines of women being worshipped, all those women have been worshipped in a pregnant state. Now we have, in India, Tamil Nadu, we have a lot of temples. We have artifacts of god images and deities. These are all, even if you go to the oldest civilization, the civilization of the Egyptians, that is only 6,000 years ago. Before that, 50,000 years ago, we find only images of ladies being prayed to, and we don't have images of equivalent men. So that is one part of the jigsaw puzzle. Next, we also know that human beings are closely related to another species called the bonobos. Bonobos and human beings are almost 98% genetically similar. So much so that when an author wrote a book about the bonobos, he titled it Almost Human because they are so much like human beings. And in the bonobo society, it is the mother who leads the pack, and her son takes control of the pack after her time. And the very significant embryological studies show that when babies are first when the babies are first created, when the babies first get fertilized, the prototype of the human babies is actually that of a female. We know now that men, even after being born, they continue to have their nipples. And we also know that nipples are only for lactation. There is no other purpose for the nipple except to feed the baby, to give the baby milk. How come all the males on earth are born with the nipples? If their primary design had been a masculine template, then they should have been born without nipples. The very fact that all human beings are born with nipples goes to prove the point that the fetal stage, the basic template is that of a female. Later on, when the boy, because he has a Y chromosome, he starts developing his testes at the 8th week of gestation. And the testes, they produce testosterone. Testosterone goes and masculinizes his whole brain and body. Only from the 8th week onwards, he becomes masculinized. Until then, he is in the primordial female template. So all these things go to prove that in nature, the first universal template is that of a female, and the male is actually a derivative. I stop now.
Yes. So डॉक्टर कह रही थी कि हमारे नेचर में, प्रकृति में क्यों है कि औरतों को ज्यादा प्रोटेक्शन, प्रकृति के अनुसार से औरतों को ज्यादा प्रोटेक्शन क्यों मिलता है। अगर हम देखेंगे कि औरतों में ज्यादा इम्यूनिटी है, मतलब कोई बीमारी से सुरक्षित रखना, वो ताकत ज्यादा औरतों में होता है। औरतों के अंदर एक हार्मोन होता है जिसको बोलते हैं एस्ट्रोजन। इस हार्मोन से उनको हार्ट अटैक या स्ट्रोक मिलने से कम चांसेस है। कि तो उन्होंने ऐसे कुछ उदाहरण दिए हैं जिससे औरत को थोड़ा ज्यादा हेल्थ और थोड़ा ज्यादा ताकत है प्रकृति के अनुसार। ओके, और उन्होंने और दो उदाहरण दिया था। अगर हम हिस्ट्री को देखेंगे तो 50,000 years ago जो जो भी हमें हिस्ट्री से जो भी हमें प्रूफ मिला है, इसमें हमें पता चलता है कि जो आइडल्स जो थे, जो मूर्ति जो थे, वो औरतों के थे। और वो औरत जो थे वो पेटसी थे, वो प्रेग्नेंट थे। और जो लोग हैं उसका प्रार्थना, उसको प्रार्थना करते थे। ओके, अगर हम बहुत साल पहले 50,000 years को देखेंगे तो ये उदाहरण हमें हमारी हिस्ट्री से मिलता है। अगर और लोग ऐसे औरत, ऐसे एक मूर्ति का पूजा करते थे, ऐसे एक मूर्ति का के ऊपर प्रार्थना करते थे, औरत जो प्रेग्नेंट है। ओके, वो एक उदाहरण उन्होंने दिया था। दूसरा उदाहरण जो उन्होंने दिया था कि अगर हम बोनोबोस जो है, अगर हम ये जो देखेंगे, ये जो स्पीशीज देखेंगे, तो ऑलमोस्ट 98%, मतलब ऑलमोस्ट 100% हमारा जीन्स जो है उससे मिलता है। ओके, ये ह्यूमन से बहुत सिमिलर है। और अगर हम देखेंगे बच्चे जो है जब माँ के गर्भ में है, तब जब जस्ट वो अंडा फर्टिलाइज होता है, तब वो बच्चा जो है मेल होने के पहले उनका एक फीमेल नेचर होता है। उन्होंने ये उदाहरण दिया था कि जैसे कि आदमी और औरत दोनों के शरीर पे निपल्स होते हैं, लेकिन हमें पता है कि उसका पर्पस क्या है। ये है कि बच्चे को दूध देना। लेकिन फिर भी हम वो आदमी के शरीर पे भी देखते हैं, जबकि आदमी बच्चे को दूध नहीं दे सकता है। तो इस उदाहरण से डॉक्टर बता रही है कि एक्चुअली बेसिक जो बॉडी टाइप है वो फीमेल बॉडी टाइप है। और जब बच्चा गर्भ में है, और तब ये टेस्टोस्टेरोन जो हार्मोन है, जब उसका इफेक्ट होता है, तब वो बच्चा मेल बच्चा बन जाता है। उसके जो प्राइवेट पार्ट्स है वो वैसे मेल प्राइवेट पार्ट्स बन जाते हैं, उसके मन पे भी उसका असर होता है। लेकिन बेसिक जो बॉडी टाइप है वो फीमेल बॉडी टाइप है, जो गर्भ में कुछ हफ्तों के बाद अगर वो लड़का है तो वो वैसे वो बॉडी टाइप बदलता है।
Yes. So we know now that from even from the point of view of evolution of life, early life forms did not have any differentiation as male and female. Even the coronavirus, all the viruses are female. There is no male coronavirus. All the bacteria, all the fungi, all the protozoa that we fight against, uh, even now, a small virus can kill all of us together. So those viruses, they do not come in male forms, they all come in the primordial female form. So all these go to prove that in nature, in the process of evolution, in the beginning, when life formed, it all formed as females, and later on, the male had to be evolved. And why in nature would man have to be male? Not only human male, I'm talking about, for example, the male as in a worm, the male as in a crab, the male as in an insect. Now, these early forms, they started evolving a separate male of the species. Why would nature evolve a separate new species when there is already one species called the female? The answer is, like we are just like I told you right now, we are still, even though we are the most powerful primate on earth, we are still fighting very small microbial organisms like the bacteria and the fungi and the coronavirus. So the evolutionary arms race, however strong and capable we are still vulnerable to these viruses. And how do these viruses attack us? The viruses attack us by attacking our genome. They break into our genome, they enter our genetic code and use our body as their vehicle to reproduce for themselves. They kill us and they spread. And how do they break into our genetic code? They break into our genetic code because they can try permutations and combinations and break into our genetic code. Let us examine, for example, how a bacteria can be killed. Suppose there is a colony of bacteria and a bacteria eating virus enters that place. The bacteria eating virus can kill every single bacteria in one single day because all the bacteria have the same genetic code. You remember I told you about the stem cell and how we can culture stem cell for human beings in the lab and create generation after generation of human cells? If one bacteria enters that lab, then all the human cells will be killed in one day. So in order to make sure that there is genetic variation, to make sure that one virus cannot kill all human beings or all bacteria at the same time, we must fight against the virus by creating new genetic code all the time. One virus might kill one human being. The next human being should not be killed. That next human being should be spared, and that person can be spared only if the genetic code is different. How do we create genetic differences in genetic code? The other animals that I spoke about earlier, the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoans, they just split into two cells. The mother cell splits into two daughter cells and they have identical genome. But if we can bring about a change in the genome, and every time we keep on making more and more changes, at one particular time, no virus, no bacteria can kill all the members of the same organism. To create the genetic variation, the male of the species got evolved. So let us assume that I am the male of the species and nearby is another female of the species. So I will go and tell the female of the species, see, I am the male, so therefore I will give you my genetic load. I don't have to carry it. You take my genetic load and you be happy. You create babies with great strength. And what does the female in the best senses think? Now, there are so many males. Why should I choose your genetic code? I will find something else, or I'll just remain like this. Why should I even make great effort to have a baby with you? Then the male has to say, see, I am the best. Because I am the best, therefore you have great advantage in taking my genes. Your children also likely being the best. And additionally, I will also protect you. So you get two advantages. You get the best genes. Your children will survive more because every genetic code is different. And I have all these survival appendages, which make the children also very attractive. And I am here to protect you. This is how in all the species, the male of the species, the primary job of the male is to first provide genetic variation. And the next job is to be there to protect, to provide, and to patrol and take care of the territory. So this is how the male of the species evolved. In every other species, the male does this job. And there is no problem, there is no gender violence, no male in this world, any animal, the ape, the gorilla, the chimpanzee, the lion, the tiger, any animal, no animal violates the female of the species. They take great care to protect the female. Let me give you one small example. We all know about the emperor penguin in Antarctica. The emperor penguins have a great reproductive strategy. They have a very short summer. In that summer, the male, it comes, all the men stand together and show off they are very strong and powerful. The female penguins, they come running and they dash against the male. And the female chooses the plumpiest male for reproduction. She lays just one egg, and as soon as she lays that egg, she just bumbles across and passes the egg onto the legs, the feet of the male, and covers him with his cloak of feather. And on one particular day, all the female penguins, they jump into the ocean. And for 3 months, they keep eating non-stop underground, under the water. In the meantime, the male penguins, they all have one egg in their webbed feet. They don't move. They just stand together. They huddle together in the cold. If we look at pictures of Antarctica, you will find a group of penguins standing together without moving. They're all incubating their eggs. They don't move. They don't eat. They don't piss. They don't poop. They just stand there still because under their feet is on their feet is a little egg. And 3 months later, the mother comes back and the mother and dad, they meet. The mother takes the baby out of the dad's cloak and finds that it is now hatched like a small hen. And the mother, she has two stomachs. She feeds the baby from the other stomach that has so far accumulated a lot of milk. On intaking that milk, the child, the little baby penguin, it molts, it gets that penguin-like appearance. In the meantime, the dad penguins, they all jump into the ocean, quickly eat. Within a week, they finish eating. and they come back and they take care of the wife and the little penguin. They teach the little penguin how to walk, how to swim, how to run, how to do everything, how to hunt, and then generations of penguins they spread. So this is how penguins or any other species they reproduce. I'll stop now.
Yes, audio is clear. Just okay. सो डॉक्टर ये बता रही थी कि अगर हम प्रकृति में जो सब कोरोना वायरस, सबको पता ही है कोरोना वायरस क्या है। अगर हम बैक्टीरिया या वायरस देखेंगे, वो सारे जो है वो फीमेल ही है, वो मेल नहीं है, वो सारे फीमेल ही होते हैं। ओके। लेकिन हम देखते हैं कि ह्यूमंस में मेल और फीमेल दोनों है। तो ये अगर मैं उन्होंने कुछ टाइम
I think Jenny has dropped. Yeah, she's joining.
सॉरी आई गॉट डिस्कनेक्टेड। एम आई ऑडिबल?
Yes,
Yes,
Jenny.
you are.
यस। ओके, सो मैं ये बता रही थी कि अगर हम देखेंगे तो जो सारे बैक्टीरिया वायरस है वो सब फीमेल ही होते हैं। और उन्होंने स्टेम सेल के बारे में हमें ये बताया था कि स्टेम सेल से हम बहुत सारे और बना सकते हैं, बहुत सारे लिविंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स को बना सकते हैं। लेकिन ये बैक्टीरिया जो है इतना पावरफुल है, वो इतने ये जो भी हम बनाते हैं उसको खत्म करने का ताकत उसमें है। तो उन्होंने बताया था कि ह्यूमंस में मेल और फीमेल दोनों क्यों है। ओके, इसका जरूरत क्या है। अभी हमें ये पता चलता है कि मेल का जो एक रोल जो एक है वो है टेरिटरी को प्रोटेक्ट करना, वो संभालना। ओके, ये मेल का एक रोल है। अगर हम एनिमल्स में देखेंगे, अगर हम जानवरों में देखेंगे, ऐसे कोई जानवर नहीं है जो उस एनिमल, समझो कि कोई भी एनिमल है कि उस एनिमल किंगडम में वो फीमेल को अटैक करता है, ऐसे होता नहीं है एनिमल्स में। लेकिन ह्यूमंस में ऑफ कोर्स हमें ये दिखता है कि आदमी जो है औरत के ऊपर ऐसे अत्याचार करते हैं, वो हम देखते हैं। उन्होंने उदाहरण दिया था पेंगुइन, एम्परर पेंगुइन जो है, जो अंटार्कटिका वो कोल्ड एरियाज में रहते हैं। ये एम्परर पेंगुइन जो है वहां पे समर जो है बहुत छोटा समर होता है, शॉर्ट कुछ ही महीनों का होता है। और वहां पे क्या है कि सारे जो पेंगुइन्स जो है एकजुट वहां पे आते हैं, और फीमेल पेंगुइन्स जो है वहां पे ढूंढते हैं कि उनको कौन सा पार्टनर चाहिए, कि उनको कौन सा पार्टनर को चूज करना है। तो जो फीमेल पेंगुइन जो है वो दौड़ के आती है और वो डैश करती है ये मेल पेंगुइन को, और वो देखती है कि सबसे ज्यादा हेल्दी स्ट्रॉन्ग पेंगुइन कौन सा है, और वो उस पेंगुइन को चूज करती है। उसके बाद जब वो अंडा को जब वो एग ले करती है, तब ये मेल पेंगुइन का जिम्मेदारी है कि उस एग को संभालना। ओके, ये वो मेल पेंगुइन का है। और 3 महीने के लिए एग ले करने के बाद जो फीमेल पेंगुइन जो है वो वहां से जाती है, और जो मेल पेंगुइन है उस अंडे को संभालता है। 3 महीने के बाद वो वापस आती है, तब तक वो अंडा जो ये मेल पेंगुइन संभाल रहा था, और वो उस समय के लिए वो मेल पेंगुइन और कुछ भी बिल्कुल नहीं करता है। 3 महीने के लिए 3 महीने के बाद वो वापस आती है और वो देखती है कि वो एग हैच हुआ है, छोटा बच्चा जो है वो बेबी पेंगुइन जो है वो वहां पे आ गया है, और फिर उस वो फीमेल पेंगुइन जो है उस बेबी पेंगुइन को फीड करती है। यस डॉक्टर।
So why would we have to compare ourselves with birds? Shouldn't we compare ourselves with other animals like cows, like tigers, like lions? But why is that we compare ourselves with birds? Because we have a common shared uh, tendency as the birds. The birds and the human beings have the common parental burden. The bird, when it lays the egg is not ready to fly. The male and the female have to work together in order to make the hatchlings become a little grown up. They have to fight and go and hunt and feed the child, feed the baby. And when the baby chicken hatch or the baby birds hatch, it has to usually take it far away to its territory, native territory, and teach it the rules of life there. That's why we have a lot of migratory birds. They come to in the summer. They come to hot places and take the babies back to the cold climate again. Just like that, the human beings also, our children are not ready to even stand up and walk when they are born. The child is born so dependent, it takes at least a year for the child to stand properly, and a year and a half to run, or 2 years to run, 3 years to eat, talk properly, eat properly, at least 25 years to become mature. The prefrontal cortex of the human brain, it only gets mature at 25 years in the women at 24 and men at 27. Until 25, 27, the offspring is actually dependent on the elders, on the community, dependent on the parents for its own survival. So the parental burden for the human beings is quite long, very, very intense. That is why human beings, they have the same strategy. Just like the birds, they have a strategy called monogamy. As human beings, with our ethnocentric thinking, we think monogamy is a virtue. But in nature, monogamy is a strategy. It's an evolutionary strategy that helps human beings to produce better quality human beings. Can you translate that, madam?
Jenny,
Jenny, are you there?
mute. You are on mute, Jenny.
होता है I want hello
Yes, we can hear you. Jenny, have you finished translating? So let me try to translate. I was saying, मनुष्य के बच्चे डिपेंडेंट होते हैं, just like birds का बच्चे.
hello
Yes. इसलिए मनुष्य और बर्ड्स एक जैसे होते हैं. Shall I continue now? So why is that of all the species of living things on earth, why is that only the human male aggresses against the human female? The female is indispensable. She is very important for the group survival. The entire group survival depends on the female. Yet, why is that the male becomes angry, violent, aggressive, sometimes even murders or kills the female? No other animal we find this culture of rape or torture or viciousness or any of these things do not happen in many other species. Only in the human species we see this happen often. Why would that be so? And a lot of research has gone into this particular dynamic, and to be very surprised, we will be very surprised to know there is only one reason why the men typically aggress against the women, and that is because they don't feel man enough. When the man feels that he is not respected, that he is being insulted, that he is powerless, that he is helpless, that he is worthless, and nobody respects him, he wants to make a point that he is a man, and the only way he can do it is by showing it to a weaker person that is physically more capable than the other person. Some people take it out on children, some people take it out on minorities, and some people take it out on women. So women, for no fault of theirs, just because a man feels for some reason small, they have to bear the brunt so that he can somehow beat himself up to show himself that after all he is a man. There is another example for this. For people who are new to these topics, this may be a little gross, but let me just go ahead and tell you this. Sometimes we find that some men flash or exhibit their private parts in public. And sometimes these men do come to us for treatment. And in all cases, these men have low self-esteem. They feel very shy. They do not want to look at people. They cannot have conversations with people. They can't meet eye to eye. These are the men who suddenly flash themselves in public. If you know these guys in person, you will think they are very, very demure, very good guys, very soft-hearted. That is what you would assume. But it's the same guy who goes to a public place and exposes himself. Now, what is the logic? Why would such a very soft-hearted guy suddenly become so, exhibitionistic? The same reason, because he does not feel man enough. He has to prove it by showing himself and to the world that indeed he does have a penis and therefore he is a male. So sometimes men have this need to show to the world that they are male, and they can only show it by showing their private part or by becoming a little violent because they are so helpless. Only a kind of violent activity makes them feel calm. So when we go back to these men and tell them, like, you should not be beating your wife. What are you doing? This is not good. What will be the response? They know it is not good. It is not that they don't know. Why are they still doing it? They do it because the culture makes them feel inferior. Culture makes them feel sidelined. The men who are on top of the hierarchy seldom beat their wives, seldom do any kind of gender violence, do not behave little. But the men who are belittled, they go and behave little. So in order to protect men, what should we give them? What is the gift that we should give these men so that they continue to transmit that gift to the women in their life? We must give these men a kind of self-respect. We must make these men feel good. We must make these men feel strong. We must make these men feel respected. That is why in human beings alone, we don't have harem. It's not like the Egyptian pharaoh, he has 1,001 wives. We don't allow that. We say even if a man is not all that good, every man should have a wife. So all men feel equal. All men feel accepted, that no man feels threatened. Every man has to have his life. This is the phenomenon that we have started having in the past few generations. Earlier on, that was not the case. Earlier on, if you look at stories from the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, one king would have many, many wives. And there would be men who never got married, who were just slaves in the king's territory. That led to a lot of problems because all men, they wait for a chance. And every reproduction is a fundamental right. Every human being has a need to reproduce, like every other species. So there was a lot of conflict, and so finally human beings came to the philosophy of, or the practice of, or the strategy of serial monogamy. But even after serial monogamy was established, some men felt excluded, some men felt belittled, some men felt that the society was being very mean to them. And that they transmitted back, just like an abusee becomes an abuser. The men who got battered by the society went back and battered their wife. So as a society, what should we do to make sure, if we need to reach out to the woman and make sure that she's safe, we have to give something to the man. We have to give the man the pride, a position in the hierarchy. We have to make him feel special.
डॉक्टर आई ट्रांसलेट
Yes.
ओके तो उन्होंने ये बताया है कि कुछ आदमी ऐसे होते हैं, शायद सुन के हमें ये सुन के उतना हम कंफर्टेबल नहीं होंगे, लेकिन हमें पता है कि कुछ आदमी ऐसे होता है जो उनका जो प्राइवेट पार्ट्स है वो दूसरों को दिखाते हैं, ऐसे कहीं पे रोड पे खड़े रह के किसी को भी ऐसे दिखाते हैं। उसको इंग्लिश में फ्लैशिंग बोलते हैं। तो कुछ लोग हैं जो उनके प्राइवेट पार्ट्स को फ्लैश करते हैं। तो डॉक्टर के क्लिनिक में ऐसे कुछ पेशेंट्स आते हैं जिनको ये ऐसे करने का एक हैबिट है। तो जब ऐसे लोग से बात किया जाता है, उनको पता चला कि ऐसे लोगों का कॉन्फिडेंस जो है, आत्मविश्वास जो है, बहुत कम है। ओके, उनको कोई कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं है। और उन्होंने बताया था कि ऐसे काफी मर्द है जो जिनको लोगों को प्रूव करना पड़ता है। उनको लग रहा है कि उनको लोगों को सबूत देना पड़ता है कि वो मर्द है, इसलिए वो ऐसे चीजें करते हैं। और ऐसे लोग जो है जिनके कॉन्फिडेंस, जिनका आत्मविश्वास कम है, ऐसे लोग होते हैं जो मोस्टली उनके पत्नी को मारते हैं, नहीं तो कोई दूसरे औरत के ऊपर हिंसा करते हैं। नॉर्मली उनका नेचर ऐसे होता है कि उनका कॉन्फिडेंस बहुत कम है, उनका आत्मविश्वास जो है बहुत कम है। उनको भी पता है कि जो वो लोग कर रहे हैं वो गलत है। ऐसे नहीं कि उनको समझ नहीं है कि जो वो कर रहे हैं औरत के ऊपर वो गलत है, उनको पूरा समझ है कि ये गलत है, लेकिन फिर भी उनके अंदर एक लो सेल्फ कॉन्फिडेंस है और उनको लग रहा है कि उनको उतना इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं मिल रहा है, इसलिए वो लोग ऐसी चीजें करते हैं। आमतौर पर जो आदमी है, जो कॉन्फिडेंट है, जो समझदार है, जो उनके जिंदगी में अच्छा कर रहे हैं, अच्छा कर रहे हैं इसका मतलब नहीं कि बहुत अमीर है, लेकिन जो भी उनका जिम्मेदारी है वो अच्छे से निभा रहे हैं, ऐसे लोग बहुत कम हैं जो औरत के ऊपर अत्याचार करते हैं। ओके। और उन्होंने ये भी कहा है कि हमें आदमी को पहले के जमाने में अगर हम रामायणा पढ़ते हैं या वैसे जो पहले की किताबें हैं, अगर हम वो बुक्स पढ़ते हैं, हमें ये पता चलता है कि अगर एक राजा था, उनके बहुत सारे बीबियां थे। ओके, वो हम देखते हैं, लेकिन आज के जमाने में नहीं है। एक आदमी है तो उनका एक एक आदमी एक पुरुष, ओके, ऐसे वन मैन वन वुमेन, वैसे ही लोग शादी करते हैं अभी। ऐसे करने से इनका इसका एक सॉल्यूशन था कि हर आदमी को लगे कि उनको इक्वल ट्रीटमेंट मिल रहा है। जैसे पहले के जमाने में अगर एक आदमी को बहुत सारे पत्नियां हैं तो शायद बाकी आदमी जो है और उनके बारे में उनका और कॉन्फिडेंस कम होगा। लेकिन अब के जमाने में हर एक आदमी, मोस्टली लोग शादी करते एक आदमी के साथ एक औरत होता है। ओके, ताकि इसका ये कारण था कि किसी को एक्सक्लूडेड ना लगे। ओके, ये एक चीज था। और ऐसे आदमी जो है जो ऐसी चीजें करते हैं, उन्होंने कहा था कि उनका जरूरत है कि उनको लोग उनको रिस्पेक्ट दिखाए और लोगों को प्रूव करने का उनको मौका मिले कि वो मर्द है। डॉक्टर, यू कैन गो।
So the gift that we can give our men, the way we handle the problem is not by belittling them and shaming them and saying, "What kind of a man are you? You are beating your wife." We have to say, "What is the problem? How can we help you to feel good? How can we help you to feel special? What is it that's lacking in your life that's making you feel so helpless and so powerless that the only way that you can feel good is that you need to look at the terror in somebody's eyes." The people who like to relish terror, see terror in other people's eyes, are psychologically not normal. But here we are, a vast population of Indian men who want to see terror in the eyes of their wives and sometimes in the eyes of their children. So, in that sense, we have failed our men in a very great sense. We have failed our men. How did we end up in this situation? How did we fail our men? Because we still have ideas that are not man friendly. Let's understand some of the man unfriendly practices that we have. We have what we call the Varnashrama Dharma, where men, it is not the women, it is the men. Varnashrama Dharma comes from the story of the Purusha Shukta from the Rig Veda. In the Purusha Shukta, there is this Virat Purusha who gives himself off in a yajna, and his eyes became the sun and the moon, his head became the mouth Brahmins generated, from his chest came one kind of human beings, from his genitals came the other kind of human beings, and from his feet came some kind of human beings, and all of them were male. No men came from this Purusha. So this is a story that puts men in certain boxes, in compartments. It says, okay, you have to be glad that you're here and that you're inferior. This is the way God has ordained it. So you have to be glad about being inferior. So this goes against nature. Nature does not classify beings from birth. In nature, there is a race to become the alpha, but alpha is not a given. It is earned. For example, in a lion pride, let's say there are 4 lions. In one season, lion 1 could be alpha. Second season, lion 3 can be alpha. Fourth season, lion 1 can become alpha again. Alpha is earned. They fight, they prove their prowess, they defend their territory. They shuffle the alpha-dom among themselves. But in the human beings, what went wrong, especially in India, is that alpha-dom is hereditary. Because alpha-dom had been hereditary for a long time, men were fighting among themselves. There was a lot of bickering. There was a lot of irritability among the men. And whom did they show all this irritability to? They showed it on the Indian woman. The Indian woman suffered a lot because the men were feeling so small. She was kicked, she was beaten, she was put into the fire, she was treated so bad, she was married off so young, she was widowed off so young. Nobody spoke about her rights, nobody gave her anything, all until the East India Company came to India. The East India Company guys were aliens. We must remember those guys came here to plunder this nation. They did not come here to do any good to our women. But even those plunderers could not bear the torture that was happening to Indian women. And the first act that they did was the act to protect Indian women. They had no jurisdiction in India. It was none of their business. Their job was to just conduct some business. But even the ruthless businessmen that they were, they couldn't tolerate the injustice that was happening to Indian women. Such was the level, such was the peril in the life of the Indian woman. Why was the Indian woman suffering so much? What was wrong with the system here? All over the world, in every single species, the male of the species protects, nurtures, cares for the female. Because without the female, there is no life. Even if you have cattle, if the mother cow gives birth to a male baby, the male baby is given away. It is the female calf that is kept in the cowshed and reared. The male is usually given away to a temple because the male is high maintenance and no milk and no reproduction. And we don't have to maintain so many males, we just need one stud. While that is the case with our livestock, what about females of the species? What about human beings? Why was a woman being treated so bad? Because women were not given value. Because our men did not know why in nature is women so special. So they were so ignorant and they went by the religious texts that gave them the power to abuse women. And until the foreigners reached our shores, this was the normal thing for us. Please translate, madam.
Yes. अभी हम पुरुष को क्या तोहफा या क्या गिफ्ट दे सकते हैं? ओके, उन्होंने कहा था कि एक चीज जो हम पुरुष के लिए कर सकते हैं कि उनको नीचा नहीं दिखाना। अगर हमें पता चलता है कि कोई गलत किसी का कोई गलत सोच विचार है, तो उनसे बातचीत करना और ये समझना कि वो उस चीज से बाहर कैसे आ सकते हैं। हमारे देश में ऐसे कोई चीजें हैं जो मेल फ्रेंडली नहीं है। इसका मतलब है कि कोई सोच विचार जो है, जो आदमी, जो पुरुष के लिए अच्छा नहीं है। ओके, जैसे कि उन्होंने बताया था कि एनिमल किंगडम में अगर हम लायंस देखेंगे तो एक अल्फा लायन होता है। अल्फा लायन का मतलब है कि मेन जो है, सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट लायन जो है वो होता है। अभी क्या है कि ऐसे नहीं कि हमेशा के लिए जन्म से अंत तक वो मेन लायन होता है, वो बदलते रहता है। एक साल के लिए एक लायन जो है वो मेल अल्फा लायन मतलब मेन लायन होता है। कुछ टाइम के बाद वो जो पद है उसको दूसरा लायन को मिलता है। कुछ टाइम के बाद ये जो अल्फा लायन का पोजीशन दूसरा लायन को मिलता है। तो उनके एनिमल किंगडम में भी अलग अलग मेल्स को ये पोजीशन मिलने का मौका मिलता है। लेकिन अगर हम ह्यूमंस में देखेंगे, ऐसे नहीं है। जैसे कि इंडिया में जो मेन रोल्स जो आदमी को मिलता है वो जन्म से होता है, कि जैसे कि कोई इस परिवार में जन्म हुआ है, इसलिए यही परिवार में जो पुरुष आते हैं उनको ही एक इम्पोर्टेंट पोजीशन दिया जाता है। ओके, और इसलिए बाकी जो मर्द है उनको ऐसा मौका नहीं मिलता है। ये आदमी के लिए अच्छा नहीं है, पुरुष के लिए अच्छा नहीं है। और इस वजह से बहुत आदमी जो है उनको एक इंफीरियोरिटी मतलब कम, खुद के बारे में कम सोचना ये महसूस करते हैं, और इसका गुस्सा जो है वो औरत के ऊपर निकालते हैं। उन्होंने ये भी बताया था कि ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी जो है, जब ब्रिटिशर्स यहाँ पे आए थे उन्होंने कंपनी बनाया था जिसका नाम है ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी। वहां पे वो लोग क्यों आए थे? वो लोग यहाँ से, यहाँ पे इंडिया में जो भी अच्छा है वो निकाल के लेके जाने के लिए वो लोग आए थे। लेकिन जब वो लोग आए थे उन्होंने भी देखा कि औरत का जो स्थिति है इंडिया में वो इतना खराब है कि उन्होंने पहला जो कानून बनाया था वो औरत को सुरक्षित बनाने के लिए ऐसे कानून बनाया था, क्योंकि उनको औरत का स्थिति देखकर उनको बहुत बुरा लग रहा था। और हर एक एनिमल जो है, वन मोर पॉइंट, हर एक एनिमल जो है वहां पे जो फीमेल है उसको सुरक्षित रखने का हर एक एनिमल में ऐसे एक पोजीशन होता है जहाँ पे फीमेल को सुरक्षित रखते हैं। लेकिन सिर्फ ह्यूमंस में हम देखते हैं कि औरत जो है इतना इम्पोर्टेंट है लेकिन फिर भी उसके ऊपर हिंसा होता है। यस।
So in order to protect women from any kind of violence, we have to give the men the sense of confidence, a place in the society where they feel important, where they feel special, where they feel respected. And how can we go about it? In those days, 1,000 years ago, if I wanted to do something to the society, all I have to do is write a Puranic text and say, because God came and told me in my dream, or I had a trance and God came and told me, this is the best book, God has given the direct words. From this day onwards, in the name of God, this shall be the declaration. Now we don't live in those days. Even if I tell such a story, nobody is going to believe me. So now we live in a time when we have to speak to every single man in terms of propaganda, just like we propagate science, just like we propagate the law, we have to propagate this idea of gender equality, this idea of man being inherently special, man being inherently a protector, man being inherently a rightful owner. He can claim a place in this world. Whoever son he is, whatever his profession is, he is man and that is good enough. So this is what we have to keep telling our boys. And if we reach out to as many boys as we can, and this information will spread, and slowly and surely they will go back to being the gentlemen that they were originally destined to be. We don't have such behavior in very advanced nations. But we did have such a behavior in South Africa. In South Africa, there was an incident where young girls were raped and cut open and really put to great hardship. They were bizarre attacks on women. They were viscerally, they were actually basically eviscerated. Their gut was opened up. And they did a psychological study that tried to understand why men were being so violent. And finally, they found out the men were feeling so insecure. They were feeling left out. They felt that they were not keeping up with the times and they were not making enough money. They didn't have social recognition, and that's why they were venting it out on the women. And so the South African government started working on bringing up the morale of the men. They started working. They didn't preach to the men and say, "Oh, you're all being such bad boys." They didn't say that. They said, "Yeah, it's possible for you to be wonderful men. Let's work on your self-worth. Let's work on your self-esteem." And that initiative brought great results. That is the same that we have to extrapolate to the Indian population. Now we have a plethora of situations. Even today, I come from the state called Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, as you might have seen, my name is only Shalini. We don't have a second name. And usually, even if we do have a second name, sometimes it's a father's name. Nowadays, it's a mother's name and father's name combination. We don't have our caste name behind our names. This is special in Tamil Nadu because we had reformist movements, and we decided to shed our caste name because caste is not a pride anymore. It is actually shameful because these professions that we now call caste, they don't exist. They're irrelevant. So how can you continue to bear an irrelevant name behind your name? Now we have new professions. These professions are not listed in our community names because our community names were given when we had one set of professions. We have gone beyond that point now, so we don't have caste names. But now the issue is in places like Tamil Nadu, we do not speak about caste. We don't treat people in terms of varna. We have rejected varna. We don't say this particular person is higher and this particular person is lower. As much as we can, we try to assuage these old claims and treat all human beings equal. In spite of that, we do have domestic violence. We have women who are beaten up, etc. But the incidence is far much less than before. I do not know the situation in your cities or villages, but we must reflect back. What did Tamil Nadu do different in order to achieve higher education, higher safety for women, higher self-respect for our men? We rejected certain old school thoughts. We decided that all human beings are equal. We decided that we will just go by liberty, equality, fraternity, and overthrow the feudal system. We decided to do it in the letter and in the spirit. Now let us go back and ask ourselves these questions. Are we ready to do that in our villages, in our cities? And what is the reward for doing this? If we make this change, what will we get? Madam, please translate.
ओके उन्होंने वापस ये हमें याद दिलाया है कि हम आदमी के साथ क्या कर सकते हैं। ओके एक चीज जो हमें करना है पुरुष के साथ, हमें उनको आत्मविश्वास देना है और हमें उनको ये महसूस करना है कि वो स्पेशल है, मतलब उनमें कुछ खूबी है। पहले के जमाने, बहुत पहले के जमाने में लोग कहते थे कि भगवान ने मुझसे बात किया है, मुझे ये सपना मिला है, और लोग ये सुनकर लोगों को रिस्पेक्ट देते थे। लेकिन आज के जमाने में डॉक्टर कह रही है कि अगर ऐसे कोई कहेंगे तो भी लोग उसके ऊपर विश्वास नहीं करेंगे। लेकिन अगर हमें आदमी या पुरुष को रिस्पेक्ट देना है तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं? हमें जेंडर इक्वालिटी, मतलब ये बताना कि स्त्री हो या पुरुष, दोनों एक ही समान है और दोनों को एक स्पेशल फीलिंग दिलाना। अगर हम आदमी या पुरुष को कॉन्फिडेंस, आत्मविश्वास देते हैं, तो वो भी औरतों को रिस्पेक्ट देंगे। ओके, उनका भी स्वभाव बदलेगा अगर उनको समाज से रिस्पेक्ट मिल रहा है। ओके, उन्होंने उदाहरण दिया था कि साउथ अफ्रीका जो देश है वहां पे औरतों के ऊपर बहुत सारे अत्याचार, औरत के ऊपर बहुत सारा अत्याचार हो रहा था। और उन्होंने एक साइकोलॉजिकल स्टडी किया था, एक साइकोलॉजिकल टेस्ट उन्होंने किया था, और उनको ये पता चला कि वहां के जो पुरुष है उनको बहुत, उनका कॉन्फिडेंस जो है बहुत कम था। उनके पास ज्यादा पैसा नहीं था, उनके लाइफ में वो लोग ज्यादा आगे नहीं बढ़ रहे थे, और ये जो गुस्सा जो है वो औरत के ऊपर निकाल रहे थे। तो उन्होंने क्या किया था, साउथ अफ्रीका की सरकार ने ये निर्णय लिया था कि पुरुष का जो कॉन्फिडेंस जो है उनको ये बढ़ाना है, और इस विषय के ऊपर उन्होंने काम किया था, और उसका उनका अच्छा रिजल्ट भी मिला। अभी उन्होंने कहा था कि इंडिया में जो तमिलनाडु, डॉक्टर शालिनी जो है तमिलनाडु स्टेट से है। अभी आपने ध्यान दिया होगा कि उनके नाम पे उन्होंने आगे डॉक्टर शालिनी के आगे कुछ लिखा नहीं है, जैसे बाकी जो हम इस कॉल पे है, हमारे पहले नाम के बाद में दूसरा भी एक नाम है ना, वो नॉर्मली हमारा कास्ट का नाम होता है, हम कौन से कास्ट से आते हैं वो है हमारा दूसरा नाम। लेकिन उन्होंने कहा था कि तमिलनाडु में जो है ये कास्ट जो है, वर्णा के ऊपर जो लोगों को बांट दिया जा रहा है कि ये व्यक्ति जो है बहुत ऊंचा जाति से आता है, ये व्यक्ति जो है जो नीचे जात से आते हैं, ये समझ जो है उन्होंने रिजेक्ट किया है। मतलब उन्होंने कहा था कि हम नहीं चाहते हैं कि तमिलनाडु के लोग इन चीजों को माने, उन्होंने इसको रिजेक्ट किया है। इसीलिए अगर एक डॉक्टर शालिनी जैसे उदाहरण के लिए ये नाम है, उसके आगे कोई कास्ट का सरनेम नहीं होगा, अगर कुछ होगा तो भी तमिलनाडु में उनके डैडी, पिताजी का नाम होगा या माँ का नाम होगा, और कुछ नहीं होगा। क्योंकि वर्ना सिस्टम जो है वो लोगों के ऑक्यूपेशन, मतलब वो लोग क्या काम करते थे उसके ऊपर भी उनको ये नाम मिलता था। लेकिन आज के जमाने में लोग इतना अलग अलग काम करते हैं कि जो काम करते हैं और उनका कास्ट सरनेम जो है उसमें कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है, तो इसलिए उन्होंने कास्ट सिस्टम रिजेक्ट किया है। जैसे ही उन्होंने कास्ट सिस्टम रिजेक्ट किया है, औरत और आदमी के बीच में जो भेदभाव है उन्होंने ये भी रिजेक्ट किया है। इस वजह से बाकी के स्टेट के कंपैरिजन में तमिलनाडु में जो एजुकेशन का लेवल है वो ऊपर है, और औरत के ऊपर जो अत्याचार जो है वो भी कम है। और लास्ट में उन्होंने, कैन यू रिपीट योर क्वेश्चन एट द एंड डॉक्टर?
Can you remind me what was that?
I did not note it down. Okay, please go ahead. I can translate it till your second last sentence about the status of Tamil Nadu.
Okay. So even in Tamil Nadu, in spite of all these advancements, nowadays we see some communities use their caste names and talk about their ancient pride. And we go back and check on these men, we find that they are not as much educated as the other people. And they probably have a very little land left, or they are in debt, or they feel that they are not up to the mark in today's standards. So only when the man feels that in some way he is deprived, or some way he has to justify himself. If he has no other crutches, he brings a crutch of his jati, of his caste name, and that is usually to belittle somebody else. And it is usually laughed at, and people ridicule other people, if they speak about their caste, or if they say, "Oh, I am a man, so therefore it's okay for me." These are all not taken as a right way of handling things. It's looked upon as very immature and very undeveloped way of processing information. So much so that our heroes in movies 20 years ago, our Rajinikanth used to talk about how women have to be very docile and subordinate. After a lot of battering from women like me, nowadays even Rajinikanth says, "Oh, women have their own power. They should be treated with respect." So we did away with patriarchy, with the constant cajoling, talking, reminding, explaining the science behind it. And our men are gracious enough to accept the scientific reasoning. And they're uplifting themselves and upgrading themselves. They're behaving better, and they're being nice gentlemen now. I'm sure if we put in this effort in every part of India, the same light can spread. But we don't start this by shaming our men. We don't start this by making them feel that they do not know it. They probably know it, or nobody invested this time and effort to show them with compassion what they really are and what they are really capable of. If we can empower our men, if we can invest our time and mind space on our men, I'm sure the light in them can be rekindled. And then this place will be safe for all our women. That is all for me. Thank you.
ओके, उन्होंने लास्ट पॉइंट ये जो बताया था कि आज आज भी कुछ लोग हैं, कुछ कम ही लोग हैं, लेकिन कुछ लोग हैं जो अभी भी कास्ट का जो चीजें जो है तमिलनाडु में बात करते हैं। लेकिन अगर वो ऐसे बात करते तो दूसरे और कई लोग हैं जो उनके ऊपर मजाक उड़ाते हैं कि आज के जमाने में ऐसे चीजों के बारे में कैसे बात कर सकते हो। ओके, तो लेकिन जब वो देखते हैं कि ये व्यक्ति जो है जो ऐसे कास्ट के बारे में बात करता है वो कैसे लोग हैं, तो उनको समझ में आता है कि ये लोग हैं जो मोस्टली शायद उतना पढ़े लिखे नहीं है, नहीं तो उनके पास बहुत कम जमीन है, नहीं तो बहुत ज्यादा कर्जे में है। तो ये सब चीजों के लिए उनको खुद को बड़ा दिखाने के लिए वो लोग कास्ट जैसी चीजों के बारे में बात करते हैं, ताकि वो दिखाना चाहते कि हम दूसरे लोग से हम ज्यादा ताकतवर है या ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसलिए लोग ऐसे करते हैं। आप सबने रजनीकांत जो फिल्म का हीरो जो है, इनका नाम तो सुना ही होगा। पहले के जमाने में रजनीकांत के फिल्मों में वो औरतों के ऊपर शायद उतना रिस्पेक्ट से बात नहीं करते हैं, लेकिन बहुत लोगों ने इस विषय को लेके चर्चा किया था कि ऐसे फिल्मों में औरतों के बारे में औरतों को नीचा दिखाना ये ठीक नहीं है। डॉक्टर शालिनी ने भी इसके बारे में काफी बार कहा है, और ऐसे बहुत लोगों के बात करने से आज के जमाने में रजनीकांत के फिल्मों में भी औरतों के बारे में शायद उतना गलत बात नहीं करते। ऐसी चीजें भी बोलते हैं कि औरतों में भी ताकत है, औरतों के साथ हमें भेदभाव नहीं दिखाना चाहिए, ऐसे भी बात करते हैं। अभी क्या है कि फाइनली उनका फाइनल मैसेज क्या है कि जहां जो भी स्टेट से हम है, ओके, हमें ये याद रखना है कि अगर हम चाहते हैं कि औरत और आदमी के बीच में भेदभाव ना हो, तो हम ये नहीं कर सकते हैं कि आदमी को नीचा दिखाना, नहीं तो उनको शर्मिंदगी महसूस करना कि वो इतना भी नहीं समझते हैं। लेकिन हमें उनको रिस्पेक्ट देना है, और हमें उनको कॉन्फिडेंस देना है, हमें उनको सशक्त करना है, और उनके अंदर जो लाइट है, उनके अंदर जो लाइट उजाला जो है वो सबको दिखे। ओके, तो उनका फाइनल मैसेज ये है कि जहां से भी हम है, जो भी स्टेट से हम है, जो भी कम्युनिटी से हम है, हमें फाइनली आदमी को रिस्पेक्ट देना है, उनको समझना है, उनको प्यार से समझाना है, और उनको पावर देना है, ताकि वो भी उनके अंदर जो स्ट्रेंथ है वो समझ पाए, और ऐसे करने से वो औरत को भी वो रिस्पेक्ट देगी, और हमारे समाज में जो अत्याचार जो है, औरत के खिलाफ जो अत्याचार जो है वो भी कम हो जाए।